This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
Welcome. This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. I'm Jonah Javad, and I am home alone because our producer extraordinaire, Andrew Seeley, is getting some well-deserved time off. But the show keeps going. The season keeps going for the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to dig into Thursday night, and the college football playoff rankings are out. And everybody is upset or excited, and we're going to get into that as well. Let's talk about what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
The Cowboys' win streak came to an end Thursday night against the Lions in Detroit. Also, Texas left out of the CFP rankings, but so too Notre Dame and BYU. Some upset Irish fans across the country. We're going to get into all that. That's what's on the show. Now let's get to who's on the show. Listen, if I'm Kevin McAllister, home alone in our WFAA studio, then I've got the two wet bandits next to me here. We got Saad Yousuf from The Athletic and Mac Engel, columnist for the Fort Worth Star Telegram. Thanks for joining me, fellas. This is going to be kind of an open forum show. It always is, but more so tonight because it's just us three. And I'm just going to kick it right off. The college football playoff rankings dropped today. And what was the biggest surprise to you, Saad, when you saw it?
This is the fact that Notre Dame didn't get in and that Miami did. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the conclusion of that ranking. I don't have a problem with Miami being in and Notre Dame not being in, but it's just the consistency. I think this was one of the worst jobs by the committee since we've had the college football playoff, and it really does boil down to that, where, you look at the data points, how things change from week to week. I mean, what changed to slip Notre Dame behind Miami from what happened last week and what the rankings were? They could have done this at any point, and to do it at the very end, not only was it a poor job by the committee, but also it was a message to all of us that we should not be paying attention to anything they put out before the final rankings.
Mac, what about you?
Two things. One that really jumped out to me is that two group of five teams got in. I knew one would get in. There's no way, Jonah, that they're going to not include every Power Four conference. So even when Duke won that game last night in the ACC title game, an ACC team was going to get in. It happened to be Miami. And then the other part that and they're going to include the group of five just to keep everybody at bay for a little bit longer. But the fact that two of them got in absolutely shocked me. And then the other part, just piggybacking off what Saad said, I'm shocked, just stunned that Notre Dame did not get invited. I know that, there's the head-to-head, and there's no good way to do it. You're going to look like a hypocrite. You're going to look like you contradict yourself. There's no good way to do it. But the one that floored me is that you're going to take in two teams from the group of five, and unless one of those teams comes close to winning those opening round games, people are going to be howling that this thing needs to be blown up and redone.
There were a lot of people complaining about it last year, when we had some of the draws that we had. When you have like a Boise State getting the ranking that they got and SMU, a lot of people were upset about that. And I still thought the playoff last year it ended up being a fine result, right? You still got some really good teams that, squared off in the Final Four. But this year, I just look at the Miami inclusion makes no sense. And the Alabama inclusion, now, there's some people that are going to say, well, it's Bama and they lost in the SEC title game, and we're not necessarily going to hold that against them. Conference championships, we got to decide, do they matter or do they not? Because it seems like for some they do, some they don't, and there's no consistency there either. The weekend now for conference championships doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to, and I think that's bad for the sport. But for a lot of these teams that are trying to get in, they're trying to figure out, well, should I be wanting to get to my conference championship? Because if I lose that, is it going to be held against me? You got a team like Miami, didn't even play for the conference title, that's making the CFP. That is insane to me. I want to get your thoughts on Alabama as well. This is a 3-loss team, and if they didn't have the Crimson Tide logo next to their name on the bracket, do you think there's any chance that that team is getting into the playoff in this scenario? Mac?
No way. If that team was named Arkansas, Missouri, South Carolina, Kentucky, Pick any number of teams from the SEC. They're not getting in. They are getting in on brand and name recognition. And look, what applies to one team doesn't apply to the next. It's the way it's always been. This is a beauty contest. This is about friends and relationships. This is not a playoff. It's what I've called the big SEC 10 invitational, because that's who's running it. The playoffs have historically, since they've started this in 2014, have historically been blowouts, because there's not as much parity as they want you to believe. There's usually double-digit scores, but in terms of inclusion regarding Alabama, there's no way Bama makes this game if it's not named Alabama.
Saad, you agree?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And I think, they got snubbed last year and they didn't get in. And so I think there might be some of that maybe riding with the committee. But I just don't, I'm with you, Jonah. Like the conference championship games mean something to me. They do. I think when you look at the way that they played against Georgia, if you boil it all down and you're trying to get to who is the best team in college football, that's what the playoff is supposed to be all about. And if you're really trying to do that, I don't understand how Alabama not only gets in, but they didn't even move in the ranking. I mean, there was no penalty for their performance against Georgia, which, to be honest, it was bad on the scoreboard, and it was even worse if you watch the game.
I 100% agree. I don't think Alabama should be in. I really don't think Miami should be in either. But I do have a bit of a hot take in that I think Texas should be in. And I might get some eye rolls from some people watching this, and you guys may disagree, and feel free to. But when I look at teams with 3 losses, I also want to see what those wins look like, and no team had better wins this year than the Longhorns. I think they were deserving of a spot. Now, if they got in over the likes of Notre Dame or BYU or Miami or Bama, I'm sure this conversation would be reversed, and everybody would say, how could you let in a team that lost to a 4-8 Florida Gators squad? But again, one of those 3 losses was a non-con game against Ohio State, which the rest of these teams did not go play. So I'm curious, do you agree with me or disagree with me that Texas was deserving of a top 12 spot?
I thought Texas deserved a spot more than Alabama, because if you looked up until last night in Indianapolis, the only close game that Ohio State has played all season long was its game against Texas. That's the only, and they won by 7. That was a really good game. The problem, Texas played itself into this conversation by losing at Florida, by getting run out of Georgia, barely beating Kentucky, barely beating Mississippi State, barely beating Vanderbilt. They played themselves into that discussion. But, when we start talking about these, I thought Texas should have been, and I shouldn't have been surprised anymore. We know what this committee does, even if the names change. I thought UT should have been ahead of Alabama. The part that irritated me when we're looking for balance and fairness and whatnot, it's how the Big 12 was treated. The Big 12 was treated worse than Group of 5 teams. BYU was really, really good. And BYU's only problem was it played Tech twice, and Tech is legit. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the only way BYU was getting in is if they won that game. And they didn't get looked at. I mean, look at the whole conversation. Once BYU lost that game, they were off the map completely. And to me, that was one of the more egregious screw-ups committed by this committee. And quite frankly, the people at ESPN, things like talking about, they didn't even include them. But to me, I thought UT had a better case than Alabama. But friends, I guess.
Saad, real quick.
I agree with that too, real quick. I think, for me, before the rankings came out, I said I don't think UT should get in because of the loss to Florida, but that was before I knew who was actually going to be included. The committee is the one that opened the can of worms. They're the ones that opened this discussion, because even as someone who, I'm rooting for Texas, I would love for them to be in. I made my peace with the fact that they were not going to make it. But the way the committee played their final rankings, now there is a case for UT to be in.
Honestly, I'm really impressed by a lot of Longhorn fans that I've spoken to over the last few weeks. They've all been at peace if they don't get into the playoff, which I always thought they were a little bit more delusional than your average Joe. But no, they came through with logic and reason. So kudos to them. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk more playoff rankings, but we're going to talk the teams that did get in and their path to a national championship.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Dallas Stars rally back in the third period to beat Pittsburgh in a shootout 3-2. The Stars have won 7 of their last 8. Also, Tom Hicks has passed away. The former owner of the Texas Rangers was also the owner of the Dallas Stars when they won their first Stanley Cup in team history. Hicks was 79.
All right, we're still talking college football playoff rankings. Mac, I'm going to start with you here. Who do you think should have got those last 2 spots into the playoff?
I was completely comfortable with Notre Dame getting one of them. And the other one, and I think the other one I would have liked to see was one of the group of 5 teams in terms of, like Tulane or even to me, it's a toss up. So to me it was all the same between Notre Dame, a group of 5, either James Madison or Tulane, or possibly even Texas. The one that I just didn't want to see in there was Alabama at all. But to me, if I had to pick the last 2, if it was up to me to pick the last 2, one group of 5, Tulane's fine, and then I'd probably gone with Notre Dame.
Saad, I didn't think Notre Dame should have got in regardless in this situation. I might be alone there, but your rankings or what you thought the rankings should be compared to what we saw today, what were the differences?
Well, to Mac's point, I think I like to see a group of 5, but I think one is fine. I didn't need to see them both. And so for me, if you want to give Tulane or, James Madison, that's fine. But I think Texas was the other team. And look, I think the way that Texas has been playing recently, I think time of the performance has to be taken into account too, how a team is playing early on in the season versus later on, as you are getting closer to the playoffs. So for me, it would have been one group of 5 and then Texas. Yeah,
well, I think conference championship rules for the CFP may have dictated that. Otherwise, this wouldn't have even been a discussion. Heading into the CFP, now that we know the 12, what matchups or potential matchups as the tournament goes along are you most excited or interested in, Mac?
Oh boy, the one that I'm really interested in is right off the bat because Texas A&M got the hardest draw by far of the opening round games. I mean, you talk about a team that rolled in the SEC. They lost obviously the season finale at UT. They've had the best season in however many years. And now your first round draw is Miami. And if you look at the point spreads of the opening round games, that's the only close one on the board. And I think it's a 3.5 point margin or swing for A&M. They can lose that game. Of all of those games, that's the one. And selfishly, I'm biased about this one because I grew up in Indiana. Seeing Indiana University in the Rose Bowl in the quarterfinal is pretty cool. So I'm very excited for a lot of friends of mine back in Indiana to see that happen. But I got to tell you, state-wise, I'm nervous for the Aggies.
Saad, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the team that I'm most excited to see is Texas Tech. Just the way that they've transformed everything in this NIL era over a year. I want to see how this works out for them. But if I'm talking about the whole bracket, I mean, I'm really excited to see what Ole Miss does post Lane Kiffin. I mean, look, it's not just the first game. Obviously, that's Tulane. You expect them to win that one. But then, that bracket that Mac's talking about, that path, after Tulane, it's a similar path from A&M as it is for Ole Miss. You got to play Georgia after that and then potentially Ohio State, and that's before you get to the Natty. I think that's going to be a really tough draw for Ole Miss after they get through the first one. But I'm really excited to see how they do post Lane Kiffin.
For me, the potential matchup of Texas A&M and Ohio State battling in the Cotton Bowl at AT&T Stadium is so good. It won't touch the Ohio State Texas matchup of a year ago, but that's an incredible potential matchup we could see in the second round if the Aggies are able to get past the Hurricanes. All right, we're going to put a pin in the CFP discussion until next week. Coming up, Cowboys. Where do they go from here? A lot of questions. That's ahead. Those Cowboys playoff chances took a massive hit in Detroit on Thursday night. Where they go from here, I guess we're going to find out from Dak and the boys. Mac, I'm going to start with you on this one. Your biggest takeaway from that loss in Motor City?
This the defense. The defense have made such improvements since the trade for Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson and the return of DeMarvion Overshawn. It just didn't look like the same group against Detroit. Now, Detroit has one of the top offenses in the NFL, but all that progress that we had seen against Philadelphia and Kansas City and the Raiders, it just wasn't there. And to me, that was the most disappointing thing. I think the Cowboys, if this was the Cowboys team, Jonah, in week 1, it was probably a playoff team, but they fell behind 3-5-1 or whatever it is, and now it's just too much ground to pick up with not enough time left.
Saad, what about you?
Yeah, I think the defense was one, but I think it was such a complete Cowboys loss. I think the offense had its spots. I think Javonte Williams, you're seeing a lot of the tread on that tire now. He looks a little slower than what he did earlier in the season. Without CeeDee Lamb, the offense is not the same. And also, I didn't think Schottenheimer had his best game as a head coach. Just, what you saw late in the first half and into the beginning of the second half, just how that was managed. So I just feel like coaching staff, offense, defense, it was about as of a complete loss as the Cowboys could have, seen.
Yeah, Schottenheimer, there have been moments this season where he's been maybe too aggressive and then times where he's way too tentative. And it may be those first-year coaching struggles where you're trying to find that delicate balance. Other talking point I wanted to bring up was George Pickens and, the week-to-week adventure that GP3 is for the Cowboys and the fan base. It feels like week to week, the discourse around these receivers is insane. 1 week it's let's give GP the 88 instead of CeeDee Lamb. Then it's we need to not re-sign GP because, maybe he's not catching the ball when he should be, or making a concerted effort to catch the ball. What was your impression of Pickens' performance in the game against the Lions, Saad?
Look, it was consistent. It's consistent with who George Pickens has been all season long. There's been the good and the bad every step of the way. I mean, are you telling me if they don't beat the Raiders, the fact that he was benched for the first series of that game and then committed a personal foul penalty after celebrating a touchdown the way that it was penalized the night before he does the same thing? It's a much bigger talking point, and you're having the same discussions about George Pickens after that one if the Cowboys lose the game. They just happened to lose this game, and so the bad stands out a little bit more than the good. To me, your opinion on George Pickens, I agree with you, Jonah. The discourse has gone from end to end on a week-to-week basis, but you know who George Pickens is. He is an elite number 2 receiver, and he's going to do things that are going to make you scratch your head, and that's exactly what George Pickens was in Detroit.
Mac, your thoughts?
I agree with a lot of what Saad said. This is the guy that the Steelers gave up on. They knew who he was or who he is, and he's really talented. I mean, you can't deny he's really good. And Saad nailed it. Had they lost that Raiders game, the narrative around George Pickens would be a lot different. Same with CeeDee Lamb, but these are hotheads, highly emotional guys. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. They can't help but overreact to everything. It's probably going to be that way through the majority of their career. And if you're going to sign him either as a franchise guy or to a big extension, you've got to go in with your eyes wide open that this is who he is. And if you give him the money, you haven't given him any incentive to alter that behavior. And he's not going to. So it's immature. It wasn't a very good game. I know Richard Sherman crushed him on the broadcast. I don't know if it was all completely valid, but there was enough of it. And I think by now they know who this guy is. And if you're going to keep him, you've got to know, okay, we've got to deal with it. And this is the part that can be uncomfortable sometimes.
They do have a tough decision to make with him. It could be a situation where Pickens chooses to go to free agency if he's not tagged. One point I do want to make with this is this has been a test for Brian Schottenheimer as well in year one, is how do you tread the line between being that player's coach that you want to be and are, for, by all accounts, but also having to be a bit of a disciplinarian and set a standard and not have a player maybe cross the line or do things that you don't like and him not face any consequence or punishment. The benching against the Raiders is a good point, but where do they go from here? Because the Instagram post about the Richard Sherman comments is notable. So I am curious to see how that Schottenheimer-Pickens relationship continues to unfold here down the stretch of the season, if that's something that is overblown or repaired or whatever it looks like, but something to monitor because of what we've seen now in Detroit. Mac Engel, Saad Yousuf, thank you so much for joining us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. My final take after the break. I had the privilege of spending a few days in the nation's capital this week for the 2026 FIFA World Cup final draw. That's when they take the 48-team field, put them into 12 groups of 4, and then determine what sites and dates that those countries will face each other in the upcoming World Cup. North Texas will be hosting 9 matches this summer in the World Cup, more than any other host site. 5 of those matches will be in group stage, round-robin format. We weren't quite sure heading into the week who's coming here. Well, we know now, and it could not have gone any better for soccer fans here in North Texas. Argentina will play 2 matches here. England and Croatia, one of the best matchups of the group stage, will be coming to Arlington. Also, the Netherlands and Japan, a really good match as well. It could have gone so much worse. It ended up being the best case schedule and draw for North Texas, in my opinion. So for your family, friends that might be coming for the World Cup, get your tickets now because it is going to be a scene at AT&T Stadium come June. I'm Jonah Javad. Thanks for joining us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We'll see you next week.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.